Hello guys, this is Nat Blue with a new video. So today we are going to be looking at the new monk for the 2024 Players Handbook. I'm very excited about this one. They've been releasing videos about the new classes and subclasses and everything, or at least the changes to the classes. And I'm hoping that the monk is a good class now. It's something I've always been interested in playing, but I haven't made that jump because I've heard that the monk isn't very good. So we're going to hop right into this.
Tell me all about the new things in the monk.
There is so much. When we embarked on creating the new Players Handbook, we knew that the monk was going to get a lot of attention, partly because the monk's satisfaction scores over the last decade have often been, unfortunately, a bit low.
Yeah.
And the monk, in terms of actual play numbers, has tended to be low as well. That combination told us this class needs some attention.
Yeah.
Now, every class got a lot of loving attention, but we knew the monk was going to need some deep work done to it. And the deep work that we did in the monk, similar to deep work we did in the ranger, really amounts to this class and the ranger largely being new classes. When you look at the features for the monk, you look down that list, you're going to see a lot of familiar friends, but also you're going to see some new things. That is evident right away at first level when you dig into the main feature of the monk at that level, martial arts, where you will find out that right away your selection of monk weapons has been broadened to be all simple melee weapons as well as martial melee weapons that have the light property. That's going to give you some more flexibility than you had before. And we've also now made it so that you can now make, with this feature, a unarmed strike as a bonus action regardless of what else you're doing on your turn. We used to have it so that the monk had to set up their bonus action unarmed strike before they could do it. Now you don't need the setup. You just simply have always the option to make an unarmed strike as a bonus action. Now, there's even more going on here than that suggests, because we have in the rules glossary redesigned the unarmed strike itself. And this is a redesign that affects all characters, but will be especially felt by monk players because of how often monks make unarmed strikes. So it used to be in 2014 that the unarmed strike was just a way for anybody to deal some damage if they were without a weapon.
Yeah.
Now, monks and a few other characters were happy to make unarmed strikes because they often were very effective at them. What we've now done is we have made it so that when you make an unarmed strike, you now have three options of what it does. It can deal damage, like it did before, or you can try to initiate a grapple, or you can try to shove your target. Really what we've done is we've taken three different things that used to exist on their own in the game, dealing unarmed damage, grappling, and shoving, and we've combined them all into your unarmed strike.
You've kind of weapon masteried unarmed strikes, basically.
And we did this for everyone so that you had sort of a single place you could go to for the cool options for your character when you are throwing down with your fists, or you're wrestling, or you're just trying to push someone back. But we also wanted to make it so that the monk could really benefit from this, because this means, unlike in 2014, any time the monk is making an unarmed strike, including as a bonus action, that unarmed strike could be dealing damage, or it could be starting a grapple, or it could involve shoving somebody. That means the monk has an amount of tactical versatility that is, with their unarmed strikes, which is akin to the tactical versatility that our weapon users have who are using weapon mastery.
Absolutely.
So, a couple of things. I'm trying not to pause too often in this video because it is a 40-minute long video. So I don't want to go too long, if that makes sense. I do like that monks are getting more weapon options. I like that it is pretty much, the simple weapons, but also the light weapons really make sense with it being more of a dexterity build kind of thing. The unarmed strike changes seem great. I do like the idea of being able to shove people more often, or having a better way to shove people more often. Ever since playing Baldur's Gate 3, I think that the shove mechanic is often underutilized in D&D. So I'm very happy that they're giving an armed strike option for shove. Overall, good changes so far, but we're only 4 minutes in, so we'll see how this continues.
But a whole lot of fun is hiding out in the unarmed strike itself and how it then combines with the monk's various abilities that use the unarmed strike. And that is evident right away in the martial arts feature.
You can just be pushing someone all around the map.
Yes. And also, boom, bonus action starting a grapple.
Yeah.
Later on, as monks are able to get more and more unarmed strikes on their turn, each of those unarmed strikes could be a different one of these options.
Yeah.
You could be shoving one person, starting a grapple with another, punching them, kicking away the other person with the shove. It is really cinematic and exciting in actual play.
Yeah.
The monk, through this martial arts feature, can now use their dexterity rather than their strength to set the DCs for the new grappling and shove options that are inside the unarmed strike. So we wanted to make sure that the monk, who is most interested in having a high dexterity and secondarily a high wisdom, that they did not need to then sort of also need to have a really good strength. We wanted monks to be able to take that dexterity and have it even support them when they're using their grappling and shoving options within unarmed strike. Monks also have their martial arts die. And this is the die that they use for their unarmed strikes. It's also the die that they can use with their monk weapons. And as they go up in level, at various times the die improves, which then means, of course, the damage of their unarmed strikes is improving and the damage of their monk weapons is potentially improving, depending on what the weapons damage die was originally. Across the board, the martial arts die has been improved. And so it now starts at a D6 at level 1 and goes all the way up to a D12 at level 17, which means monks have just simply had a buff across the board on their damage output. Because we realized, digging into the intricacies of the class's math, that it just was not delivering the amount of damage that it should.
That's been one of the reasons I haven't played a monk. So from what I've looked into, because I've considered playing a monk a couple of times, I think story-wise, there's a lot of good options for playing a monk. A lot of good backstory options. But compared to the other martial classes, so the fighter, the paladin, the ranger, the monk just doesn't have a high enough damage output. I think even compared to things like the barbarian, where a lot of barbarians are not necessarily meant for damage output, they're meant for tankiness, like the totem bear, or the bear totem and everything like that. I think that the monk just lacks in damage output. So I'm happy that the improving the martial die to help fix that problem a little bit. And adding the extra weapon should help fix this problem a little bit.
And so this is a rare case in this player's handbook of a class just simply getting
A flat-out damage buff.
just a flat-out damage buff.
Yeah.
And we were able to do that because this is also the unusual class that has so much of its damage passing through a single feature, and in this case it's the martial arts feature. Whereas we have other classes where damage is instead routing through different weapons, it's routing through different spells, whereas with the monk so much funnels through this level 1.
This is a sidebar. I love this picture, but like I said in a previous video, this guy's teeth are massive, first off. I am also just now realizing that this Dragonborn monk has like sweatbands on his arm, and I think that's kind of hilarious. I don't know why I think that's so funny, but I do kind of like that he has these sweatbands on his arm.
Feature. You ready for some more monk excitement?
Yes, I am ready for more monk excitement. I'm concerned that this is going to be a 3-hour video on the monk.
So, at level 2,
Yeah.
we made it a level.
Wow! We got to level 2.
So, in the new feature called Monk's Focus,
Yeah.
this is a replacement for a feature that used to be called Key, and this has changed in way more than just name. It is, I mean, other than sort of some surface details of you get some points to spend on various things, there are so many functional changes in here that I'm glad just for that reason alone that the feature has a new name to signal to people.
Yeah.
Pay very close attention to this because in the new Monk's Focus, you have a pool of points that are now called focus points to spend not only on the options that are in this feature, but also a number of the options that appear later in the class. And anyone curious about using any monk material that was published prior to this book, anything that referred to key points in the past should essentially just be read as now referring to focus points. Inside this feature, you still have these sub-options that were there before, but they're really only here in name. Flurry of Blows, Patient Defense, and Step of the Wind. I say they're here really only in name because so much has changed functionally, because there have been major enhancements here. First, Patient Defense now lets you take the disengage action as a bonus action without spending any points.
Wow.
Before it required points.
Yeah.
Now, when you get Monk's Focus, you simply gain the ability to take the disengage action as a bonus action. Similarly, the Step of the Wind component of Monk's Focus lets you take the dash action as a bonus action. So what these now do that relates to focus points is you can now use focus points to enhance them. So for example, you could spend a focus point with Patient Defense to, yes, take the disengage action as a bonus action, but also the dodge action at the same time. Similarly, Step of the Wind on its own lets you just take the dash action as a bonus action, or you can spend a focus point to be able to take the disengage and dash actions together and have your jump distance doubled for the rest of the turn.
Jeez.
And so now spending your focus points rather than it unlocking the base ability is instead about enhancing the base ability. Now, Flurry of Blows is the one of these 3 options within Monk's Focus that only has a version where you spend focus points on it.
Yeah.
And that is you spend a focus point to make 2 unarmed strikes as a bonus action. The reason why it doesn't have a sort of freebie version like Patient Defense and Step of the Wind.
Oh, you've already gotten that.
Exactly. You got the freebie version back at first level.
Yeah.
Because at first level, you now get the ability to just for free as a bonus action, boom, use your unarmed strike.
Yeah.
Okay. A couple of things here. I do kind of worry a little bit with these videos. So he said if you want to use a prior edition, so like 5e, you would just change the key points to FP. I feel like they're making it sound like it's more backwards compatible than it is. Because all of the other changes to the monk is going to make it so you don't want to play a 5e monk with the 2024 rule set. So I feel like they're not being very transparent with how backwards compatible this actually is in actual play, because you're going to have to make changes to the entire class. It's not just going to be like your name change. Secondly, I do like the second level abilities, getting this enhancement. So like getting the free part of the two actions. So like Step of the Wind and I think it's Patientless Defense or something. I've never played a monk, so these are new to me. Fury of Blows. Floy? It doesn't matter. Is a very strong second level ability because you're pretty much getting 3 attacks in one turn, which is a little unheard of for any class. But I mean, they do want to increase the damage output, and I'm never going to complain about a strong ability as a player. And as a DM, you just have to account for that kind of stuff. Give your monsters a few more hit points if you're too worried. And one of the best things to do, in my opinion, as a DM in these kind of situations is if you're worried about it, throw a monk enemy in there. So if you have a monk in your party and you're like, oh, this is getting a little overpowered, they're getting so many attacks, just throw an enemy in there that's also a monk that gets the same abilities. Because if it's good enough for the players, it's good enough for you. So I think overall, great changes so far. I'm just kind of worried that this isn't as compatible with 5e as they've been saying it is.
So now what Flurry of Blows does is let you enhance
Flurry of Blows, not Fury. Flurry of Blows. I cannot say that very well.
that by spending a focus point. I really love this new approach where, again, your focus points in a way are about amping up the volume rather than needing them to do your baseline
You
course.
don't need them for the identity of this class. Yeah.
Exactly. Because now the way we've structured it, even if you're out of focus points, you can do all the baseline monk things.
Yeah.
And focus points now become just really cool spice. That's how you crank it up. Focus points are also critical for some of your higher level abilities that can be used only with focus points. Now, we also took to heart, though, that even though we had lessened how many of your baseline things require focus points, that monks have often felt focus point constrained and too constrained. Because we always want, when there is a limited resource in the game, for there to be a sense of limit. I mean, that's the point, for you to feel like your resource decisions matter, and for there to be that growing sense of danger as you see, you're basically your power tank going down toward empty, whether it's focus points or spell slots or something else. But even with all of that in mind, we felt we could give monks a little more breathing room. And so with that in mind, at level 2, they get a brand new feature after all this other brand new called Uncanny Metabolism. And what this lets the monk do is, when they roll initiative, just decide to regain all their expended focus points. You're getting this feature now at level 2. Now, once you use this feature, you can't do it again until you finish a long rest. But that means once per day, when a battle starts, you can just say, I got all my points back. And that's not all. You also regain a certain number of hit points when you do that. So this uncanny metabolism is you just drawing in your personal resources and saying, I'm ready for another fight. And that's probably going to keep you going for the rest of the adventuring day, or at least a good part of it.
Nice.
Now, when you get to level 3...
We're at level 3.
You now get deflect attacks, and this feature has been redesigned so that it is more versatile than it was before. This used to be the feature that gave you a chance of catching a projectile that was fired at you, and if you managed to zero out the damage completely, you then had the option of trying to hurl it back. And then there were some complexities of the nature of that projectile affected the damage that you were sending back. We wanted it to be easier and more fun for monks to use this ability. And so what we did is we now made it easier, just the whole operation, for the monk to figure out how they reduce the damage. We no longer care about the physical quality of the thing that's hitting you. All we care about in this rule now is that it deals bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage. So whatever it is that's coming in, you can try to deflect it and reduce the damage. And then if you reduce it to 0, and that reduction, by the way, is you roll a d10 and you add your dexterity modifier and your monk level. And if all of that combined zeroes the damage out, you have the option of spending a focus point to then basically redirect the attack's force towards somebody else. And now that other target now has to make a saving throw, and if they fail, you get to do an amount of force damage to them based on your martial arts dice. And remember, your martial arts dice are way better than they used to be.
Yeah.
This feature gets even spicier at higher level, and I'm going to skip ahead because later on...
Eventually it's energy.
Yes. All the way at level 13, you get a feature now called Deflect Energy, where you can now use deflect attacks to deflect any damage type. No matter what it is, whatever energy is coming in, the monk with their preternatural abilities can use their focus to bounce that fire over there, deflect that wave of thunder towards somebody else. It's pretty badass.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Okay, so I love deflect attacks. It sounds like it's just deflect missiles, but a little bit better. The deflect energy thing is pretty sick. It gives you like that Avatar The Last Airbender feel of like bending the energy back towards somebody. So I really like that. That's probably how I would flavor it if I was a monk. If somebody threw like a firebolt, for example, just like redirecting the energy of the firebolt instead of catching the firebolt and throwing it. So I think that's pretty cool. I like that the deflect energy is at a higher level because it does seem tough to give that to a very small, like low level character. Seems a little bit too much for lower levels, so I do like that they separated them like that. Let's keep going though.
In addition to their damage output being improved, we have also looked at ways to improve their survivability. And that's evident in how their superior defense feature works at level 18. It is also evident in their disciplined survivor ability, which is what they can use to reroll saving throws. It's also especially evident at level 10 in their self-restoration ability, which is a new feature that combines elements that they used to have in other features, where when they get to the end of their turn, if they're charmed, frightened, or poisoned, and again, this is at level 10, they can just say, "No, I'm not." And before, this had an action economy cost associated with it. No, not anymore. Now just the monk, they get to their end of their turn, and it is literally this good. Of they're charmed, frightened, or poisoned. Nah. We really wanted monks to have this kind of superhero.
Are they saying there's not a limit to how many times you can do that? Because I'm happy that they're getting this ability. It's pretty cool, but I feel like there should be a limitation to it because that means those abilities are just useless almost, like the charming and fighting the monk, which I understand there's other classes that have resistances to charmed and frightened. There's other races that have resistances to charmed and frightened, but it does seem like an ability that maybe you should put a limitation onto. I mean, I might be wrong, but it just does seem a bit powerful. Same with, poisoned is a little bit more reasonable, I think, because you probably still took poison damage, but I think they probably should put a limitation on that. We'll see how well it plays at a table, but it seems like a little bit too powerful. I mean, at level 10, it's not too bad, I guess. At least they're not giving it to you at like level 6 or something.
In how not only they fight others, but also in how they're able to keep themselves alive. We also have adjusted in a level 10 feature called Heightened Focus what you can do with Flurry of Blows, Patient Defense, and Step of the Wind. So we already enhanced those 3 options back at level 2. Well, when you get to level 10, they all get even better. And we did this because these 3 options are so fundamental to the monk. One being about keeping themselves alive in the form of patient defense. Flurry of Blows is essentially their damage output option for their monk's focus, and Step of the Wind is their mobility option. And again, all 3 get better at level 10. In between, when they got those features back at level 2 and them getting improved at level 10, they also now have their Stunning Strike, which has been adjusted. Now, this is one of the only places in the monk where a feature's power got toned down a slight bit.
Right, yeah.
And we don't feel bad about it, given how much the monk has been buffed.
Yeah.
We've now made it so that Stunning Strike can be used just once per turn, because there have been cases in the past 10 years where Stunning Strike can get a little out of hand if a monk player uses it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
But I think the sting of that limitation will pass very quickly when people realize that we've now made it that if the target, even if they succeed on their saving throw, they're still affected to a certain extent. So if they fail their saving throw against your Stunning Strike, they're stunned, as you would expect. If they succeed on their saving throw, their speed is halved until the start of your next turn, and the next attack roll made against them has advantage. So when you use Stunning Strike, it's going to have an effect on your target. And really, they're making a saving throw to find out what that effect is going to be. So in the end, Stunning Strike actually got buffed. It's really, we've limited how often you can use it.
That's perfect.
So on top of all of that,
Yeah.
monks, like everybody else, get Epic Boon at 19th level, and also then have some majorly enhanced subclasses.
One of my absolute favorite ones, just because just from the look of them and the mix of healing and necrotic damage, is the Warrior of Mercy.
And this is a subclass that appeared for the first.
That is such cool artwork. I like the Plague Doctor mask. I'm also fine with the changes to Stunning Strike. I think it still would be a great ability. So
First time in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, where it appeared with the name Way of Mercy, and people will see that all of the monk subclasses now have a naming pattern of Warrior of something.
Yeah.
It's the same subclass as before, just now with Warrior at the front instead of Way of. And in several of our classes, we have unified how that class's subclasses are named. When we get to the Sorcerer, we'll talk about how all their subclass names have been unified, and we've done that in a variety of places to not only get the names so that they're all structured the same way, but also to set up how we'll name the subclasses in future books. So the Warrior of Mercy, of the 4 monk subclasses in the book, is the one that has evolved the least, partly because
It's most recent in the new designs.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
It's the most recent. And so the main thing that has happened here with this monk, who's all about both help and harm, has been integrating it into the revised class. So otherwise, this is the subclass people know and love from Tasha's Cauldron, but now fully integrated into this completely redesigned monk class. But the subclass features themselves, other than some tweaks in wording to make it so that they fully integrate, it's what you saw the last time you played and enjoyed this subclass.
I've never looked into the Way of Mercy monk, so I might have to look into that. I'm just curious. It sounds interesting. I like the theme of it, so I'll have to look into that. I'm curious about that. I do own Tasha's, and I've just never read it, so maybe I'll do that sometime.
Incredibly fun subclass.
Now, when we get to the other 3 subclasses, we have the Warrior of Shadow, we have the Warrior of the Elements, and the Warrior of the Open Hand. So the Warrior of the Elements completely replaces the Way of the Four Elements. The Way of the Four Elements, sadly, in terms of satisfaction, was often the lowest rated subclass in the 2014 Players Handbook.
Yeah.
And so looking at it, we realized the best path forward is to replace it.
Yeah.
And the Warrior of the Elements is a subclass that people got to see a draft of in the Unearthed Arcana process, and now the final version is here in the book. This is a monk who is all about channeling the elemental forces of the multiverse and using those elemental powers as part of their martial arts. And so you're going to see a number of really fun things here related to that. First off, these monks are able to increase the reach of all of their unarmed strikes as they use wind and water and fire and earth to extend their reach. So you can imagine, cool tendrils of water going out to make it so that this monk can punch someone like 10 feet over there.
Yeah.
And it's not Mr. Fantasticking or one-piecing over there with a stretchy punch. No, it's the elements themselves reaching out to extend their reach. We also give them, and you alluded to this, we give them a new cantrip, the Elementalism cantrip, that allows them to shape the elements around them, shape water, fire, earth, etc., so that they can feel like they have some of this elemental magic even when they're outside combat. And when you get the subclass, because by the way, this is all right when you first get the subclass, you gain these benefits. You gain elementalism, you gain your extended reach, and you also are able to do your elemental strikes. And so whenever you hit somebody now with that extended reach that the elements are giving you, and you are dealing damage to them, you can first off change that damage type to one of a list of damage types that we provide, all elementally themed. But then you can also force the target to make a saving throw, and if they fail, you can move them around the battlefield as either wind is blowing them, or water is causing them to flow away, or fire is causing them to stumble back. Whichever element it is that you're deploying, you suddenly, with that extended reach, get to be like, no, you're here, you're now over there. So a lot of tactical fun is waiting for you right here at level 3 when you first get this subclass. Then when you get up to level 6, you gain the ability to essentially extend your elemental power to a greater distance. Now you'll be able to take a magic action, expend some focus points, and then cause an explosion of elemental power up to 120 feet away from you. And this is a 20-foot radius sphere explosion.
Whoa.
Where you now deal damage, and it is based on your martial arts dice. And so this is something that will scale with you as your martial arts die gets better. So even better than we did with the Way of the Four Elements, we're giving you the ability to easily just bring some spectacular elemental effects to the battlefield. And rather than expecting you to choose a particular element that you use all the time, the theme of the Way of the Elements, and it's partly why we changed the name of the subclass, rather the Warrior of the Elements, is you are tapping into the whole elemental chaos. You're not necessarily tied to any particular elemental plane. Instead, you're tapping into the chaotic mixture of all of them, which is one of the reasons why we made it so that you can choose every time you use these abilities to pick a different one of the damage types that are available here.
So I like the Way of the Four Elements so far. We're going to cut off Jeremy Crawford here for a second because I don't want to forget a couple of things. I love extending your reach for your attacks, for your unarmed strikes, by using elemental damage. I can just imagine playing a monk that they punch and there's like a sonic boom of wind that hits the enemy. I think that would be really cool. Or like they said, like tendrils of water come out of your fist, or vines for the earth one, maybe even a burst of fire. But I think that's really cool. I love the ability at higher levels, getting that ranged attack with the 20-foot radius. That's going to be really good. And I could imagine like a tornado of fire being in that 20-foot radius. So I think there's some really cool stuff there. I do think this is definitely an improvement over the Way of the Four Elements. So I'm excited for this one. This is one that I would be very interested in, but at least in 5e, the Way of the Shadow and Way of the Open Hand were the ones I was most interested in. So I'm curious to see what changes they've made to those.
It's also why even in the art for this subclass, you'll see in the monk's image that she is channeling multiple different elements all at the same time, rather than just being a monk of fire or earth or wind or what have you. We also have made it so that while you have those benefits going of that extended reach and you're using your elemental strikes, which I should have mentioned earlier, you have to actually activate. They're not on all the time.
Right.
You have to spend focus points to turn them on. And so when you're just going about your day, you don't have water extending from your hand.
Distracting.
But yeah, if you use focus points to turn on these powers, well, that power that you've turned on just gets better and better as you go up in level. So once you reach level 11, whenever you've activated your elemental attunement, that's the name of the feature that gives you that extended reach and those elemental strikes, now you also have a fly speed and a swim speed because you are carried aloft by the winds,
Right.
you are pushed along by the waters, so now you have supreme mobility on top of the outstanding mobility that monks already have. Then at level 17, you get a feature called Elemental Epitome. And this also improves your elemental attunement ability. You now get an elemental damage resistance that you get to choose, and you get to choose it at the start of every one of your turns. So,
Oh, wow.
So every time your turn starts, you just get to decide if that turn, or rather until the start of your next turn, you have resistance to acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder. And in certain battles, that could be really useful to be able to just keep switching those.
Yeah.
Also, we've made it so that when you use your Step of the Wind, while your elemental attunement is going, your speed increases, so now you're even faster. And as you move around the battlefield, you can cause damage to foes that you're moving by because of all this elemental power that is swirling around you. In many ways, you can almost imagine the Warrior of the Elements as the cousin of the Circle of the Sea Druid,
Right.
Because both of them are going to have these sort of destructive auras around them, but they use them in very different ways, although they can, the two of them, fly and swim together.
Yeah.
That's why I kind of think of them as buddies. You also, in this capstone ability, have the option to just once per turn deal some extra damage because of all of this elemental power that is swirling around you. And so all of these features combined make the Warrior of the Elements this elemental powerhouse who's going to be moving around quickly on the battlefield, who has not only an extended reach, but also a built-in magical ranged ability to blow up an area, I think going to be super exciting.
So now let's talk about the Warrior of Shadow. I have played this subclass quite a bit. This has had significant quality of life improvements, and it makes you even more dangerous. If you wanted that Shadowfell, the threat in the darkness feeling, this is the subclass for you.
Yeah, we wanted to make it so that the Warrior of Shadow was even more suffused by shadow than it was before. And one of the ways that we did that is we preserve the ability for this subclass to cast the darkness spell, but now we've made it so that you can see in that darkness anyone who has used that spell.
That's a good quality of life adjustment right there. That's the biggest issue with darkness, is you can also not see in the darkness. So that's nice. I'm really excited for this subclass. Like I said, I've been very interested in the way of the shadow. So I'm curious about the warrior of shadow.
You know that part of its power is very few creatures in the game can see through that darkness.
Yeah.
And so being able to create that darkness and see in it, and then later use your own darkness that you've created to fuel your shadow step, the teleportation that these monks get that relies on you being in dim light or darkness, you can start creating synergies with yourself that are just super fun.
Yeah. The advantages you get by being able to see someone in the darkness and them not being able to see you are extreme.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you now are in many ways the scary companion to the assassin rogue.
Yeah.
It just as the warrior of the elements is the buddy of the Circle of the Sea druid. The warrior of shadow and the monk is definitely the buddy of the assassin. And
Right.
I could see these two being a really scary pair hunting down the bad guys.
I think that is a cool ability. Like I said, the biggest drawback behind the darkness spell is that you cannot see in the darkness. I think the player will have to be strategic about using it. So it's great if you're doing like the shadow monk is going to try to take on a small group of enemies while the party focuses on everybody else. Or even if the shadow monk like makes the darkness and then the wizard can cast like fireball spells and stuff into it without having to see into the darkness. Because you have to consider the fact that your party members can also not see through the darkness. Unless they're about to address that, I think that's something you have to take into account. Unless there's a reason that one of your party members can see through the darkness. In my current campaign, I gave one of the players a magical eye that allows you to see in magical darkness with its own drawbacks. There's issues in daylight and stuff. But unless you have something like that, your party members are also not going to be able to see through the darkness, which isn't a drawback to the subclass. It's just something that the player would need to consider, I think.
We have taken that shadow step ability, which is so core to the identity of the warrior of shadow, preserved it, but then improved it at level 11 with improved shadow step. We've now made it so that when you use your shadow step, you now have the option of expending a focus point to make it so that you are not required to start or end the teleportation in dim light or darkness.
Yeah.
And because we found that as cool as shadow step has always been, one of the most difficult aspects of it were being in an adventuring context where there is no dim light or darkness.
Yeah.
And now we've sort of double solved for this here by giving you this darkness you can create and see in,
Yeah.
so you can use that.
Because if you are physically in the light, that's still an issue.
Yes. And we wanted to make sure you could always use your core ability.
Yeah.
As that's a part of this subclass. But there's more. In improved shadow step, we've also made it so that if you spend that focus point, you not only don't have to start or end in dim light or darkness, but as the part of the same bonus action when you teleport, hey, you also get to make an unarmed strike.
Yeah.
Immediately after you teleport. So you can just suddenly appear next to somebody and kabam.
Yeah.
Finally, at level 17.
Really quick, I do love shadow step. I like that they're making the improved shadow step at later levels. I think he said like 11. Because shadow step has always felt like the lesser version of misty step and phase step. So I'm happy that shadow step is getting some improvements, even if it isn't like the core shadow step. You have to wait until you level up for it to improve, but it's still good news for the monk class at least.
We have a much improved Cloak of Shadows ability. And this not only lets you turn invisible,
Yeah.
but it also makes you partially incorporeal.
Yes.
So that now you can pass through occupied spaces as if they were difficult terrain. And you can use your flurry of blows, which is normally costs a focus point to make 2 unarmed strikes as a bonus action. You can now use that while you're in this limited time Cloak of Shadows form. You can use that flurry of blows without spending any focus points. Now, instead, you are spending focus points to activate your Cloak of Shadows, but once you've activated it, you can just be this shadowy force moving around and punching or kicking the heck out of things.
I mean, obviously, this has nice synergy with the Gloomstalker Ranger as well as the Assassin, but I would either like to see these two together or fighting each other. The Fey Patron Warlock teleporting all over the battlefield and the Shadow Monk doing the same thing, and they're just trying to get at each other. It's like a constant chess match.
It's not a PvP game.
Not with that attitude, Jeremy. It can be a PvP game. If you want it to be a PvP game, I mean, the DM's there to make everybody enjoy the game. So if you want PvP, your players can go at it for all I care.
But it is in my head. Not when I play.
It's a co-op
But
game.
it's fun. Listen, sometimes.
Okay, to this point, I get what Jeremy's saying. That was just a joke, guys. I do sometimes use classes to make villains, so it could still happen. I just had a character in my game that I DM, an NPC, that was an Archfey Warlock. I've never played an Archfey Warlock as a player, but I did play a higher level Archfey Warlock as an NPC. I think he was like level 14, 15 maybe. So it is still an option to have a fight with this monk, the warrior of the shadows, versus an Archfey Warlock. You just kind of have to make a Warlock NPC.
So the best adventures start off with everyone not getting along. Guardians of the Galaxy.
But anyone who is like you, what I would encourage is absolutely.
What's going to come next?
Oh, no. It's a DMing tip.
Yeah.
Absolutely take inspiration from classes and subclasses for the monsters that you create.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeremy. That's exactly what I was trying to say. Yeah, just use it for the monsters. I mean, like I said, sometimes I just make a player in like the D&D app that I use for character sheets and just use that player as a villain. Sometimes you have to give a little bit of buffs to that because normally a player won't have as many hit points as an NPC would or as a monster would. But yeah, you can definitely just take stuff from this and use it for a monster if you want to. Honestly, it would be cool to have like a Shadowfell Blink Dog. I mean, I think there's a Shadow Mastiff. What am I talking about? Yeah, the Shadow Mastiff pretty much has the same step ability. And with the new enhancements to this, I would make it to where the Shadow Mastiff, you could have like a stronger version of it if you want to. You could homebrew a stronger version of the Shadow Mastiff. That the Shadow Step is also not reliant on ending up in Shadow. And you could give them the same monk ability of when they finish the Shadow Step, this higher level Shadow Mastiff can take like a bite action. So I think that's, I mean, you can finesse some stuff. You can make up some stuff yourself.
Because yeah, there are some really cool abilities here that you absolutely could riff on in a monster or NPC. And then you can absolutely create some of those awesome moments that you're thinking.
100% if there was a Shadow Monk in one of my campaigns, I would have a Shadow Monk villain that casts darkness and fights the party inside the darkness. And the only person that can see him doing this is the Shadow Monk player. So it becomes kind of a issue of trying to protect the party while dealing with the threat, because the party just can't see what's going on. So that could be a fun thing to play with that you guys could definitely use.
Yeah, and that brings us to the final warrior.
Yes, the warrior of the open hand. The warrior of the open hand we can kind of think of as the most monkish of the monks.
Yeah.
Really leans into the core kit of the class, the unarmed strikes, the high mobility. And what we wanted to do here is just make sure it was delivering those goods in as fun a way as possible. We took, for instance, wholeness of body at level 6. And before, this was a way for this monk to heal themselves. It took a whole action. Now it's a bonus action. So we want you to be able to just weave this into what the other things you're doing on your turn. And you can also now use this multiple times per day. And this is a part of our effort to enhance monk survivability. We also have a brand new feature in the Warrior of the Open Hand called Fleet Step. And what this feature does is whenever you take a bonus action to do anything other than Step of the Wind, you can also use Step of the Wind immediately after that bonus action. So I was just telling you about, these monks can now heal themselves as a bonus action. Well, the very next feature combos with that, and it means even if you use your bonus action to heal yourself, you can also Step of the Wind.
Yeah.
And that's because we wanted, while some of the other monk subclasses are again getting things like flight or teleportation, we wanted these to be the monks who are just zipping around the battlefield.
Yeah.
And even when they're like patching themselves up, it's like, oh my gosh, how fast is she running?
Yeah.
And then finally, we revised Quivering Palm. This was the I touch you, and then at some point you may or may die. We've now made it so that it now deals a truckload of damage on a failed save and a smaller truckload of damage on a successful one. It does no longer just instantly zero a creature out. This was one of the only other places in the monk where we needed to adjust the power down a little bit, because Quivering Palm before essentially had kind of the theoretical possibility to deal infinite damage, because it could reduce any creature, no matter how high their hit point pool was, down to 0.
Yeah.
And this was just not scaling well, particularly with some of the higher level encounters that we want high level characters to be able to have, and have those encounters still be a challenge.
Yeah.
So what we did, even though we took away the deal infinite damage portion of Quivering Palm, we did make sure that the damage it deals is, as I said, a truckload.
Okay. Perfect.
So all of these things together amount to a class that has been reimagined, redeveloped.
Yes.
We've play tested the heck out of it, and it is a ton of fun.
When you pre-order the digital
Okay. The Way of the Open Hand sounds great. I think I'm more excited for the the Warrior of Shadow. And honestly, the Warrior of Elements, I think, sounds really cool too. So overall, I'm honestly excited for the new monk for the 2024 Players Handbook. I didn't know how I was going to feel going into this video. Like I said, I was excited to talk about it and to watch the video because I've always been curious about monks, but I didn't expect to like the video this much. I'm kind of stoked for the monk coming out with the new classes adjustments, the new updates. I do think that this in the Ranger might be my most the classes I'm looking forward to the most right now. So the Ranger, I was really excited for a couple of things, especially the Fey Wanderer, the Gloomstalker. I love both of those. I've never played a Ranger, but both of those sound great now. And the monk, like I said, warrior of the elements. I'm going to mess that up a lot. Warrior of the elements and warrior of shadow. I'm also very excited for. They sound great. I think that they made some very dissolved adjustments because there were a lot of issues with monk in 5e. But yeah, this is exciting stuff. I'm really hoping they come out with the last couple of class videos soon. I need to see the one for the bard. The bard is my favorite class, and I'm curious about what they've changed for it because it's already one of the most versatile classes. And that's kind of the bard's bread and butter is versatility. So I'm kind of hoping that they keep that sentiment alive. And then I'm curious about what the 4 classes for bard they've picked are, because I mean, I have my own opinions, obviously. Okay, so this was a great video. Like I said, I'm looking forward to the new monk changes. I am going to buy this Player's Handbook. I didn't know at first because I really don't want to support Hasbro that much. But there's a lot of great changes in this. I'm very curious about like the monster manual, the DMG. I know those are going to come out later, but I'm excited to see where this goes. So if you liked this video, leave a like. You know the deal. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see these videos as they come out. Hit the notification bell if you want to see them when they're released, if you want to get notified when they're released. Other than that, I hope everybody is having a great day. Leave a comment in the comment section if you're also excited about the monk, or if I missed something, or you're not excited about the monk. We can discuss it. And until next time, peace.